Mara Jade, Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan Mandalore. These are just a few of the ladies of the holotables, guys, that have wielded lightsabers, and I'm sure there's more than just 2% of us that love using them. Today we're going to be checking out one of the newest additions to that club, and that is Padawan Sabine Wren. We're going to be checking out her kit as a whole, where she works well, where she doesn't work well, and then grading her across all game modes. With that being said, everybody, let's get into it, shall we? Alright, so first and foremost, guys, this series is called Making the Grade, and we're going to be, as I said, grading her across all game modes. Now, we're going to start out by just kind of overviewing her kit a little bit, what she does, what she doesn't do, where she works well, how to mod her, all of that kind of stuff. The goal of this video is that if you know nothing about Sabine, but you want to know more about her, this is the video that will give you everything that you need to know moving forward. So, with that being said, like I said, guys, we are going to be checking out Padawan Sabine Wren here today, first and foremost. Let's take a look at her overview as a whole first. So, first of all, she is a light side character. She is an attacker. She is Mandalorian and Spectre and Ufu. Now, all three of those come into play pretty significantly here, folks. Largely because, as you're going to see, she's able to work in a couple of different comps. She can work very well with Mandalorians, Bo, who we'll talk about in a second. Also, she's very good with Seer and the Ufus, although less effective there. We'll talk about that in a second. And then, of course, she does really, really well with the Spectre team under Ahsoka in particular. So, these team comps that we have. So, first and foremost, obviously the number one comp, guys, is Ahsoka, the GL version of Ahsoka. When you combine her with those other core Spectre teams and members, she's phenomenally good. We'll get into the details of how well that grades out later. She also can work, though, in the event that you don't have Ahsoka just yet. She can also work very well under General Syndulla and her leadership. Not obviously near as high of a level as under GL Ahsoka here, guys. There's a massive disconnect there, which we'll talk about later. But if you're really hurting for a place to put her, it does work. Bo Mandalore is probably, in my opinion, the best place to put her if you don't have Ahsoka and if you don't have Spectres. She can work under a Seer-led Ufu team, but there's just not a whole lot there. She's not really bringing a lot to the table. You lose out a lot of the benefits from her uniques, which we'll talk about here in a second. But at least with Bo Mandalore, you are still getting a lot of benefits from her uniques. So, next thing on the agenda, let's take a look at her abilities and kind of see why some of these things work and why some of these things don't work. First of all, her basic is called Practiced Swing, which is a cool little reference to her in Rebels. It deals physical damage. It does stacking armor penetration. Now, there is a limit to how much of that you can get, folks. Just be aware of that. But it does help if you are able to get some of that rolling. Never a bad thing. Also, she grants crit chance to other allies as well, which is very important in a Spectre team in particular. We'll talk more about why that is in a little bit here. But just know that this basics, it's pretty basic. Quite frankly, it's a very basic. It doesn't do a whole lot, but it does buff up your team a little bit as a whole if you have Spectres. Now, the specials in particular are where she really shines, guys. The first special that she has is called Frantic Strike. Frantic Strike does physical damage. It inflicts pinned as well as off balance to the opposing team, to enemies. Off balance is a very unique mechanic. It's kind of a combination of stagger as well as expose. It's not quite as good as both of those individually, but it does a little bit of both of those elements in one debuff, if you will. Pinned is also very good, very helpful. Pinned only applies to one particular character, to be clear, guys, whereas off balance can apply to multiple characters on the opposing side. This is an AoE, and it also does individual damage. Like I said, the pinned debuff is an individually placed debuff. It also does additional individual damage based on who you were targeting. Now, off balance, just to be a little specific on what this does, guys, it causes your opponent to lose health and term meter. So that's why I said it's kind of a combination of expose in terms of the health and a combination of stagger with the term meter. Again, not as extreme as both of those debuffs, but it does a little bit of both of those things together quite well. Now, her second special that she has here, guys, is called Fallback Tactic. I would argue that the first special, I think, is actually her best special, but this one also is very good in certain circumstances. This does physical damage 2 times physical damage. It also allows for stacking crit damage and bonus crit chance. So this is something that, while if you start the battle out may not seem super great, it's a little underwhelming at first, as the match progresses, this becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. So there are some perks to this. Like I said, I think the first special is a little bit better as a whole, but this one can ramp up and can become very, very good eventually. By the way, the bonus crit chance is based on Mandalorians and or Spectre allies, and specifically, this also can remove turn meter based on the number of relics of your allies, and then the number of crits that you're hitting as well. So again, we talked about how crit chance is super important in her kit and then across the board with the Spectres. This is one of those reasons why. The amount of turn meter that you can remove is based heavily on that. To be clear, guys, there is a base 25% turn meter removal built in. That will always happen. But you can also get additional turn meter removal based on the relics and the crits that you have on your team and on the damage. So, again, 2 key things with those specials, guys. By herself, these aren't very good, okay? They're just not very good. When she is in a Spectre team, specifically with an Ahsoka lead, this stuff absolutely blooms and does some ridiculous work, okay? Now, before we get too far into the grading system yet, let's talk about her last ability, which is a unique. The unique is Sentinel of Lal. I said that the specials are probably the best part of her kit. It's probably debatable, because this unique can be insanely good, guys. You're going to see this a wall of text here. I try my best to simplify this, but there's a lot of information here, okay? So first and foremost, this provides counter chance to her, 70% to be exact, plus she gets bonus crit chance and damage as well. If she is under a Mandalorian leader, aka Bo Mandalore, she gains stacking Ancestral Resolve. So really, even though it says a Mando leader, guys, it's really just Bo Mandalore. It would not work very well under like a BAM, anything like that. So keep that in mind. Under a Spectre / Ahsoka lead, so there are 2 qualifying things to this, guys. There's a Spectre clause in this, and then there's an Ahsoka clause in this. But just for simplicity, I kind of put it all into one thing. But keep in mind that they are 2 separate factors. Based on that team, she also gains Stacking Force Connection. Stacking Force Connection, kind of like Ancestral Resolve, in that it gives her buffs in terms of stats. Force Connection, very, very, very important in a Spectre team. Obviously, in a Bo Mandalore team, Ancestral Resolve, very, very important. So, the bonus crit damage per Force Connections is another massive bonus. This is where I think, again, that those 2 specials become super important. They're kind of tied together, guys. The specials themselves are okay, but it's this Force Connection stacking and the bonus crit damage stacking per Force Connection that is so important. So she is not, to be clear, guys, she is not gaining this bonus crit damage per Ancestral Resolve. Okay, that's an important factor to keep in mind. She does get that per Force Connection. So in other words, what does that translate to? That means that she does okay in a Mandalorian team, but she really flourishes in a Spectre team, particularly under an Ahsoka lead. Now, the Omicron, this is a huge Omicron, guys. Huge Omicron. I am not personally a massive TW person, but as far as Omicrons go, this is one that's a must-have in my opinion. I do have it on my team, and it's ridiculous. This, in combination with Hera, or General Syndulla specifically, I should say, makes this team absurdly good in TW. So the Omicron that we have here, Mandalorian allies get bonus stats. Again, you're not really going to use her there, but it's just a nice bonus. It means it's something that you can get from that if you don't have Ahsoka, or if you don't have a Spectre team. Ahsoka gives bonus Force Connection, and remember, the more Force Connection, the more bonus crit damage. That's built into her unique, so that's important, okay? Stacking crit damage per Ancestral Resolve / Force Connection. So again, it's additional. So we have what we have built into the unique as a whole, and then we get additional amounts of that in TW with this Omicron. It also helps to speed up Ahsoka's ult as well as Ezra's Purgle Migration progress. So they get to their alt and Purgle Migration stacks maxed very, very, very quickly when you have this Omicron on Ahsoka, or Padawan Sabine, sorry guys. The other big thing, this is so easily overlooked, is that all allies, this is not just Sabine guys, all allies gain 300% offense for one turn after they have not, or after they've been exiled. So in other words, once exile is removed from them, their next attack does 300% offense. This team destroys people, just destroys people in TW. And when I say people, I'm talking GLs, guys. Like C-Bane, forget it, not gonna work. Like, it's just nuts the amount of damage that comes out of this unique, and in particularly this Omicron itself. So if you can't tell, guys, again, I think the specials are really, really, really good, but this is why they are really, 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 really good. It's because of this unique and this combination with Ahsoka and a little bit with Ezra, but specifically in particular Ahsoka. All right, so now that we've talked about the abilities as a whole and kind of the team comps and where she should go, let's get into the modding, because this is probably the most important part of what you do with a character once you get that character up and running. For me, it's pretty much just A or B. And I don't think there's a wrong answer with your A or B choice here, guys. You're either going to mod her with offense sets and then crit chance sets, or you're going to mod her with crit damage sets plus crit chance sets. For me personally, I prefer crit damage, guys. I go with crit damage. You can kind of see here. I'll bring up my mod so you can see it on screen. I just would rather have a much, much bigger base of crit damage to start with and use the offense in my secondaries versus, you know, having that higher level of offense but then struggling to build up that crit chance. It's kind of, again, A or B, guys. It's like 1A, 1B. There's not really a losing situation in here. I would say it depends on your mods. If you have some crit chance mods, or crit damage mods, I should say, that have great offense secondaries, then I think you probably want to roll with crit damage. If you don't have mods that are like that, then yeah, probably go with the offense set to try to boost that offense some more. I think it just depends on the secondaries that you have, guys. One thing I want to point out, without a doubt, you definitely want the crit damage triangle, in my opinion. That is, I think, an absolute given, bar none. And again, just in case you guys are wondering, in terms of general stats, I'll show you what my Sabine looks like in terms of general stats. She is very weak. She can die very easily, so be careful of that. She does not need a crazy amount of speed. But again, 240% base damage in terms of crit damage is very, very high. And that stacks very quickly. Remember, she gets 50% almost immediately, guys. So she's going to be doing upwards of 400% crit damage by the time she's up and running. And then my offense, again, this could be a little higher. If I ran an offense set, this would probably be pushing 10,000. But it still does pretty well. And you definitely want to shoot for over 100% crit chance, guys, if at all possible. So, as I said, guys, just a general overview again. Offense secondaries, either offense crit chance or crit damage crit chance. Kind of depends on the mods that you have and your preferred approach to this. All right, next up, the biggest part of the video, probably that what most of you are interested in, and that is the actual grades of this character as a whole. So the first one that we're going to look at, guys, is the raid. As of recording, as of today, we still have not had an announcement on what the next raid will be. So we're still kind of assuming that she may or may not be useful in the raid. It's an unknown. So it's a question mark for now. If we end up with a Peridia raid, this pretty much becomes an A. If it's a mercenary raid, it goes down much lower. Or if it's something completely unrelated to that, certainly much, much, much lower. So raid is a question mark. We're pretty much just not going to include that in our overall evaluation. Galactic challenges. I'm giving this a C. This is probably a bit of a controversial one. Here's my reasoning. She does not really do a lot of buffs or debuffs. All of her stuff is very, very specific, like force connection and off balance, or pinned. And as of now, in most galactic challenges, those are not things that are common. So her grade in terms of benefiting you there is very, very minimal. Anytime you have a character that pretty much just ramps the damage, they're not going to be super helpful when it comes to different feats and things like that. So Galactic Challenge for me, she is only a C unless we have a very unique debuff or force connection based thing, you know, with off balance and force connection. If that's included as a feat, then this score skyrockets. But as of now, we have not seen very much of that. In TB, I'm giving her a B, mostly because she herself doesn't really excel as much in TB. She has to be with Ahsoka, essentially, for this to be a good team. It is a great team, to be clear. The Ahsoka team in TB is very, very, very good and just wrecks teams in TB. But herself, she's very limited. With the Mandalorian team, she doesn't really do a whole lot in TB. She's not going to help you in any of the special bonus missions, really. You're going to want somebody else from the original Bo Mandalore team. So she's usable if you have Ahsoka. If you don't, not really. So we're going to give her a B on that one because she is at least good, but nothing amazing. In Conquest, again, this might be a little controversial, guys, but I'm going to go with a C. Very similar conversation to TB and Galactic Challenges. In TB, she's very limited to basically one team. In Conquest, it's pretty much the same idea. She gets a little bit more usability with a Bo Mandalore team in Conquest, in my opinion. But unless you have Ahsoka, she's really not going to help you a whole lot. Yes, you can put her in a Seer team, but even Seer is limited in Conquest. You could put her with a General Syndulla team. That team's pretty limited in Conquest as well. So she's got a very, very, very limited level of greatness in Conquest because it has to be Ahsoka pretty much. And as we talked about earlier, the feats with Galactic Challenges are very limited. Unless you're running an off-balance feat or you're running a force connection feat, she's pretty much useless. She just does damage and that's it. Now, where the scores change here significantly, guys, is TW. I wanted to give her an A+. I really, really wanted to give her an A+, guys. And that is largely because her Omicron is so good, especially in combination with General Syndulla. But the reason I couldn't give her an A+ here is because you have to have Ahsoka. If you don't have Ahsoka, then that Omicron is not very good. I shouldn't say not very good. It's very limited. You can use her with Bo, and even then it's not a great Omicron at that point. This Omicron really is specifically built to work under Ahsoka. Now, Ahsoka with this Omicron, and also potentially with the Syndulla Omicron, easily A+. Probably the best team we have ever seen in TW, quite frankly. So I want to give her an A+ there. Know that she is amazing in TW under the Ahsoka team. You will not regret that Omicron at all. I highly, highly recommend you get it. But because she has to be under that Ahsoka team really to be viable, we're going to just bump that down to an A, guys. Now, GAC, probably where most people are interested if you're at all into PvP content. Similar concept. We're going to give her a B+ there. She's really good. She does some amazing stuff in GAC. The Omicron obviously does not apply to her there in GAC. But once again, we're limited to the Ahsoka team, really. Yes, she can apply under a Bo Mandalore team. She can also work under a Hera Syndulla team, or General Syndulla, I should say. But she's kind of limited in terms of just how good she can be unless she has Ahsoka as the leadership character here, guys. So those are our grades across the different game modes. Now the question is, how do we grade her as a whole? For her overall grade in the game right now, with the information that we have, guys, she is going to be a B. She's a good character. She's definitely a good character. She's definitely worth going after and investing in. But I would not go for her and invest in her unless you are going to do the Ahsoka farm. If you're not going for Ahsoka, hold off on her, guys. Even if you have a Bo Mandalore team, or if you're looking at getting a Bo Mandalore team, she's not going to really benefit you that much. She adds a little bit to it, yes, but that's just kind of a placeholder in the event that you don't have Ahsoka yet. She's not worth farming unless you have Ahsoka, in my opinion. If you're going for Ahsoka, though, get her yesterday. She's still a great, great character. Certainly not going to be a waste at all with your materials, guys. All right, so that will conclude our making the grade for Padawan Sabine, everybody. First of all, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, I would greatly appreciate it, guys, if you could drop a like. And also, feel free to subscribe and turn those notifications on, guys, so you don't miss anything moving forward. last but not least, guys, I just want to say thank you to the patrons. Couldn't do this without them, folks. They are a major, major help to what we do here in the community and in the channel. So just want to give them a shout out, guys. And with that being said, we'll catch you next time.
Just cannot be beat.